I'm Mark Ramsey, and my special guest today is Dave Ron, co-president of Custom Channels. Greetings, Dave.
Hello, Mark.
You know, co-president, Dave, that kind of thing never works. I just want to warn you. You know, it's like The Office with Michael and Jim.
Yeah, I know it. Well, the good news is we've been at it with my business partner John Bradley now for nearly 20 years, and so far we've managed to make it work. So
That's
we'll
awesome. I think there are rules about you might owe him some money if you guys ever part ways just because of the length of your relationship. You realize that?
Yeah, well, we're still working out the buy-sell agreement.
I understand. Okay.
See you later.
Custom Channels is in the streaming business, in the online radio business, and I want to give you a chance to talk about, well, why don't you first talk about what Custom Channels is, then we can talk about where streaming is and where radio is relative to it.
Sure. Well, as you know, we've been longtime broadcasters, consultants to radio stations. It's really the only career we know. We know radio, music, consulting AAA stations around the country. And so when the whole internet thing started to boom at the end of the 90s, we were trying to figure out what's going to be our route. How are we going to get involved with this and provide services for our clients? And we decided, rather than get into web pages and graphics and all of that kind of thing, to focus on the audio side because that's what we knew the best. And we figured, well, let's become experts in streaming and licensing and monetization and all the things that we need to know how to do in order to do effective streaming. And really thinking at the time that this was going to be a boom for broadcasters, that we could, now have an unlimited number of ways to communicate with our audience, to provide specialty channels of content, and to monetize those using the existing advertiser and listener relationships that we already have. And that was 10 years ago. And we've morphed the company quite a bit over that time. We're still doing a lot of work with broadcasters, but interestingly, we're doing more and more business. Most of our clients now are non-broadcasters, people who want to get into the internet audio streaming their own radio station game, but don't really have the expertise to do it.
So wait a minute, Dave. If I'm a non-broadcaster, why do I want to get into the streaming game?
Well, because they know that music and audio content is a terrific way to engage with their customers and to reflect what their brand is all about. If you go to the Chipotle website, Chipotle Mexican Grill website, you can tune into Chipotle Radio on there, which plays essentially the same eclectic, very interesting, hand-picked mix of music that you can hear when you go in to buy a burrito. So it's a way you could sit at your desk and have part of the Chipotle experience even when you're not in the store.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. By the way, this message brought to you by Chipotle. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the kind of thing that could be packaged for the Chipotles of the world by broadcasters if they wanted, yes?
Absolutely. There's, I sort of subscribe to the... Well, one of the things I found out about broadcasters, and I guess I've always known this because I are one, and that is that we like everything to be big. We, put up a stick, we have the most power we possibly can, and we try to get the biggest possible cume on that stick. So that's our mentality. And then we go out and sell those big numbers to big advertisers for big contracts, and we call it a day. Well, in the internet world, and what we found out about streaming is that it doesn't work quite that way. Our numbers are much smaller, and I've kind of taken what I call the Volkswagen rule to streaming, and that is small is beautiful. Those of us old enough to remember the old Volkswagen ads of the little bug compared to the big cars that were out there. But that webcasting and streaming in general is particularly well suited for small audiences. Mm-hmm. It scales really nicely at that level. You'd never go buy a radio station to put on some tiny little niche format. You're going to want to have a huge mass appeal audience, but you could certainly start a web stream to do that. Mm-hmm. So our whole model is not about trying to get the largest number of listeners, but to get frankly the smallest number of listeners that are the most engaged with the content that you're providing.
Okay, now it won't surprise you to know that when broadcasters hear the message, smallest number of listeners, they don't jump up and down with excitement. Isn't the main point that it isn't about the number of listeners as much as it is about your ability to monetize that audience through this channel and get those incremental dollars that make every radio station's cash register ring as well as your clients' cash registers ringing?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? This isn't a foreign concept to radio stations. I came out of the promotions department, and we routinely sold promotions, whether it be a booth at a bridal fair or a giveaway of some kind that we were doing for mentions and an in-store draw, that might attract hundreds of listeners, and we were able to sell that by packaging all of the values that we could provide to that client, including a particularly good fit with their product. And we could often sell that for thousands of dollars in excess of what it actually cost us to produce that. But we don't take that same NTR thinking towards webcasting. We still want to sell the big numbers, kind of the Arbitron numbers or the webcast metrics numbers, and reduce it to a cost per point. Well, we really need to be selling the uniqueness, the value of it, and the audience connection with it.
Okay, and you said NTR, that's non-traditional revenue. I like to use the term new traditional revenue. Give me an example, though, as specific as you can, an example of a broadcaster who used your service to do exactly this, to add new streams to their portfolio of streams and monetize them in such a way as to make the whole bigger than the sum of its parts.
Right. Well, I got a couple of examples. I think one of the best ones is longtime friends of ours, Kink FM in Portland, Oregon. We're doing 4 side channel streams with them: a new music channel, a blues channel, an acoustic Kink channel, Kink Lights Out, and at Christmas time we add a 5th. It's the Kink Holiday channel. And they were able to, when they initiated those channels, actually go out and find sponsors for them that were appropriate before they even launched the channel. They could sell it in concept. They were going to combine web promos, email promos, on-air promos, on-channel promos, video gateways, all of those things. And even though none of those channels necessarily have, the audience on those is infinitesimally small compared to their over-the-air broadcast or even their over-the-air stream, they know a lot about the type of audience that listens to that because they know a lot about their audience, and the only people listening to it are the same people who listen to the Kink terrestrial stream.
And Dave, isn't it true, though, that in that case, what the advertiser is buying is not the raw numbers of ears, but the ability to have a piece of the Kinkiverse and to share in that Kink audience in this special way with this special little, love object, so to speak? I mean, it's more than just buying access to ears, right?
Absolutely. It's about creating a unique environment, an uncluttered environment where you're not competing with every other advertiser in there, and giving the client some exclusive branding. I think the idea that you talked about before, couldn't a radio station go and sell Chipotle radio? Absolutely. There's no reason why any of these channels couldn't be branded around the client, and let the station even take the back seat to that. The listeners know it's still the station presenting it, but there's no reason why you couldn't put the client out in the forefront on that and get a premium rate for doing that.
Now, what kind of money can stations make by doing this, and how much of a pinch is the sound exchange factor?
Well, the music licensing is clearly the biggest hurdle to all webcasting, frankly. It's still a very big impediment, and that's one of the reasons why I say small is beautiful when it comes to webcasting, because it does work in small numbers. Once you start to get very large scale cumes, once you get to be Pandora size and some of the other ones, some of the other larger webcasting outfits, the costs of delivering that become unsustainable for most operators. But yeah, so I think what we're talking about here is creating a channel that costs you maybe $1,000 a month to produce and stream, but that has enough value built around it for a client that you could generate 3, 4, 5 times that in revenue from that client. And there's no doubt that probably includes some on-air promotion, some webcast, or some website promotion, some email promotion. But frankly, those are all the marketing tools we have at our disposal, and most standalone webcasters don't have that. radio does.
Okay, well, if people want to get in touch and learn more about custom channels, what do they do?
Well, they can certainly contact me anytime, Dave at customchannels.net, and visit our website at customchannels.net.
Now, Dave, again, is the co-president of Custom Channels, and one thing I know is that he's going for the gold, and it's going to be all his any day now. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be Dave, President, Custom Channels. Dave, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mark.